You're listening to Dark Nights Paranormal Show with Kerry and Mark on Parasearch UK Radio.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Dark Nights. I'm Paul Rook, and I'm going to introduce you to your new hosts for this evening. We have Kerry Ann.
No, you don't. You have
Kerry Greenaway. I've just been talking to Kerry Ann. Oh, my God.
That was a really great show.
It was a really good intro there, and never mind. Kerry Greenaway, rather.
Yes, I'm Kerry Greenaway. Hello, everybody.
And there's too many Kerrys on these shows, I'll tell you. And we've also got Mark Manley.
Good evening.
Good evening. How are you?
Oh, it's not too bad at all. Thank you very much. Yourselves, you're ready with your bamboo and everything?
Yep, we're ready with the bamboo. Absolutely.
Oh.
So I think it's literally all over to you guys, and I'll just jump in when you ask me something.
Don't you?
I'll probably ask you for the keys to the handcuffs, all right?
Well, you're not getting them to the end.
Oh, my goodness, you two. You started already?
We have.
We need to put a disclaimer out, lads. Is what we need to do. We need to say this is not of a particularly lovely subject, and so listener discretion is advised, because there could be some sexual references, and obviously the topic is not a particularly lovely topic. And secondly, I'm going to apologise now for my inappropriate humour. I do apologise now. I have to. I can't help myself. I really can't help myself sometimes. So I apologise in advance for anything that may offend. If my humour and laughing offends anybody, I'm just putting that out there, lads. Okay.
I'd also like to say that all methods of torture discussed tonight has been tried and tested on Mark at one point.
They have.
Yeah. Actually, I'll have you know that all these methods of torture have been tried and tested between Paul and Tara from the Tara for the T-Files. So let's go.
But we're not discussing that tonight.
And we're not talking 50 Shades of Grey either here tonight.
Well, okay. So, lads, we're going to start with Vlad. We're going to go with Vlad the Impaler.
Awesome.
Because he was really horrible. He was a really, really horrible person.
He had issues. He definitely had issues.
He definitely had issues. He loved to... impalement, obviously, is where you... Mark... I can't. You're going to have to say this one.
Okay. Impalement was used as a form of torture by Vlad Tepes. It was his favourite form of torture. In fact, it was his favourite form of punishment for any crime, ranging from the smallest theft, like nicking an apple, up to being a raging colonel from a major army, and you just go, right, come here, there you go. We're going to do that. And they used to basically get a pole, put somebody on the ground, stretch them out a little bit, grease the tip of the pole, and put it where the sun doesn't shine. Then they would lift you up, and depending on your rank in the opposing army, depended on how tall the pole was. So if you were a lowly foot soldier, you'd have a few inches where it shouldn't have a few inches. But if you were, say, a colonel or something like that, you had about 6 foot of that thing going straight through you. And it could take a couple of hours to kill you before the shock set in. Or it could take up to, some reports have been up to 3 days, 3 to 4 days before it eventually killed you. And it would have come out of the top beside your neck, out of your shoulder. And yes, a jolly time was had by all. Especially when he used to sit there and eat his dinner, surrounded by all these.
And no Poles were hurt during the making of that.
No, they weren't. Neither were the Russians.
No, he was a nasty old man, this one. I mean, it was a very volatile... All the times we're talking about with these methods of torture were really horrible times in history. I mean, I have to say, when you start reading about, the lifestyle back then, it was a hard time to be a human being. And in all of these forms of torture, we're not just talking about Vlad, we're talking about all of the different forms. It's actually quite gruesome, isn't it? What people used to do to each other.
I do know that Vlad the Impaler was hailed as saviour of, I believe, the Romanians. I think they were the ones that looked towards him as a saviour because he was protecting them from their enemies. So it was only the enemies that feared all the impaling.
No. Did you hear about the, was it Brasov incident?
No.
Yeah, he wasn't a very nice person to the people of his own, shall we say, constituency.
Yeah, but then if they're going to commit crimes, then they've got to face the punishment.
No,
Not necessarily. No, he was worse than that because he was
Vassal,
actually sort
that's
of
it.
like he was actually like on a mission to like rid his country of poverty. And there's one occasion where he went to lots of different people, like blind people, poor people, elderly, handicapped, you know, all the lower people that weren't able to, like, you know, sustain themselves basically. And he offered them an invitation to a party.
Banquet,
Yeah, in a house. And of course, all these people came because there's like free food and drink, you know, hey, who wouldn't? And he asked, allegedly, he asked if they wanted to be cease being a burden to their loved ones. And they took it as something that it wasn't. And so they were like, oh, yeah, you know, we'd love to stop being a burden to our families and, you know, get out of this poverty trap that we're in. So that everyone agreed. And then once they agreed, he actually ordered that the house was set on fire and he killed everybody. So he wasn't a very nice person.
But
So
he gave them
although...
the choice.
Yeah, but they thought
What
they were
would
going to
you
get money
choose?
and stuff.
Yeah, what would you choose? What would you choose? I'd say, yeah, I want to get out of the poverty trap,
No,
thanks.
no. If I've got to suffer, everyone else has got to suffer as well. So no.
Right,
Wow.
empowerment for Paul.
I was going to say, that's Paul's method of torture decided.
In fact, whilst we're talking about impalement, can I just very briefly touch on one more form of impalement?
Go ahead.
One that you're now going, oh God, about. The
I am.
Chinese.
Oh, no.
Yes, that form of impalement. The Chinese had a very nasty form of impalement. And basically, there's this very, very fast-growing bamboo that can grow up to 3 feet overnight. And if they really didn't like you, they would strap you down onto the floor, legs wide open or legs akimbo, and they would plant some of this stuff. You'd be put over it, and then overnight this bamboo would grow up through your hoo-ha and come out your body. Lovely. I bet they never went to IKEA with that.
Anyway,
Moving on.
I do
No,
actually say though, if I'm suffering, everyone else has got to suffer. So enjoy that, Mark, wouldn't you?
What are you trying to say there, mate?
The worrying thing about that particular form of torture was, and this is a more recent form of torture from what I understand, it's not been, I can't think of the word, it's not been proved, I suppose. You know, there's not actually been proved, but it was supposed to have been used in the Second World War in Korea, I believe.
Actually, it was also used in feudal China as well, because it was written about in a couple of temple scribes' diaries as well.
But my question with that one is, excuse me, my question with that one is, I didn't think any plant could grow without sunlight.
Yeah, rhubarb can, and bamboo can.
Oh, well, there you go. All right.
And if you
Fair
look
enough.
in the chat room there, I see that Mr. Alan Cooper, hello, Mr. Cameraman, he's put in a little thing. They're saying the world record for the fastest growing plant belonged to a certain species of bamboo, which has been found to grow at a rate of 35 inches per day. So you can imagine being sat down on a piece of bamboo. That's going to sprout 35 inches overnight.
Oh, my goodness.
And no, ladies, sprouting 35 inches overnight is not a good thing. Not in that case, anyway.
Whew. That's really quick.
Yeah, exactly. Apparently, Alan said it was really quick as well. Anyway.
But that's a different story.
A couple of other things about Mr. Vlad Tepes there.
Oh, yeah, good old Vlad.
Yes. There's a story, because we were talking about it in a week, weren't we? There was a story about we see it in the film and this, that and the other, about his wife throwing herself off the building and killing herself, and he had a heart cut out and put into the castle.
Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't. He didn't particularly love his wife. He was married a number of times, and the only person he ever loved was his mistress, with whom he had a couple of sons. And he was attacking a city one day, and somebody's knocking at the door. Basically laying siege to it, and this woman actually came from this city, and the locals found out, grabbed her, tied her up in the marketplace, and cut all her locks off. And then he basically turned around and said, "If you touch one more hair on her head, I will raze your city to the ground." So they let her go, but he kept one of her locks of hair in a case in his wardrobe. And his wife found it one day, and he went mad and actually beat his wife. But that was the only case where he's ever loved anybody and actually kept anything as like a small shrine. The thing about the heart was his real wife, when she died, she actually asked to have her heart put in a golden case and kept in the town that she was born and brought up in. And then after that, the case was moved to a little cove just south of Dracula's castle.
Well, allegedly, they say that Vladimir's castle was Bran Castle, but it wasn't, was it?
Wasn't, no.
No. There's no record of Vlad the Impaler. I love that word. Vlad the Impaler. Being at that castle. Being at that castle at all. And yet you see it being branded about as being Dracula's castle. And it's supposed to be really haunted, but it's not actually haunted by anything to do with this Vlad the Impaler.
Exactly.
It has its own history. And that's actually what makes it quite fascinating, because he never actually went there. I mean, when you look at the pictures of this, of Bran Castle, it does look what you would expect a vampire Dracula castle to look like, because of all the stories it conjures up that image, doesn't it, in your head? But
right.
It wasn't actually anything to do with Vlad the Impaler at all. And we even had trouble.
Yeah.
Gosh, it's all going off at your place tonight.
No, that was our paranormal push patch trying to get in on the radio there. She was just
That's
saying
okay. That's all right. I've got a hellhound at this end, so I'm sure we'll hear him at some point.
Did you know Prince Charles is actually related to Vlad the Impaler?
Is he?
Yes, he is. Through King George, if I remember rightly. Let me have a quick check of my notes here. Yes, King George. King George V. There you go.
Well, thank God he hasn't gone around impaling people.
Well, no, I think if Prince Charles had gone around impaling people, well, Camilla would have left him, and he'd probably been arrested for public indecency.
I'm not even going to say what I just thought then.
I wouldn't. Yeah, past the watershed, but, keep it clean.
I'm not even going to go there. Anyway, moving swiftly on. So that's impalement and Vlad, because he loved dipping bread in blood. He was really bloodthirsty, wasn't he?
No.
Oh, what?
No, he didn't. No, he didn't dip his bread in the blood. I did research right into that, and it actually comes from a poem that villagers made up about Vlad Tepes, and the wording for dipping his bread, that sounds like a euphemism in itself, and washing his hands almost sound the same or look the same when they're written down, and it was actually he used to wash his hands in the blood of his victims. He kept buckets of blood beside his dinner table when he had his food outside, and he'd wash his hands in buckets of blood of the victims. He never actually dipped any bread.
And then eat.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, my God, can't he just get some tomato sauce like normal people?
That's nearly as bad as dipping his bread in blood.
Ugh.
Maybe that's why people like black pudding.
I think somebody's just passed out in the kitchen by the sounds of that thud. Do carry on.
I don't like that black pudding.
Anyway, shall we? Would you like to know about some different forms of torture, or would you like to know about witches' torture? Actually,
yeah,
because there's a rather famous place associated with that.
There is. It's another castle.
Right.
It's called Musham Castle, and it's in Austria.
And it was also very famous for being at the centre of, the very head of the Australian witch trials, and it was an extremely bloody, horrific place to have been in and around.
It was horrible. Witches torture across Europe and the UK, well, and even America, actually. Like when you look at witches torture, God, they did come up with some inventive things, didn't they, Mark?
Well, they weren't very nice. They were not very nice at all.
I mean, I think one thing that strikes me with this is when we was looking at torture, particularly when we were looking at the witches' forms of torture for witches, was how more inventive they seem to be in regards to women's torture.
Yeah, I know. I can see where you're going with this. You're on about the Pair of Despair, aren't you?
No, I wasn't actually, but being as you bring that up, why don't you explain to everybody, being as Richard has already warned you about how graphic you can't be on this one.
Right, okay, well, the Pear of Despair looks like something from your worst Alzheimer's party. And it's literally a metal pear that is 4 leaves that come together, and at the bottom is a screw mechanism. And they use the Pear of Despair for heretics, i.e. witches, or adulteresses, and of all things, men accused of being homosexual or ladies accused of being lesbian, which these days, nobody gives a monkeys about that. But back then, that was, oh, the devil's in you! Actually, no, it was a man called Roger. But this pear they used, and if they didn't get the correct confession out of you or the correct information they wanted out of you, they would insert this pear either in your mouth, where it was known as the choke pear, or if you're a gentleman of a certain persuasion, they would put it in the back door. And if you were a lady who had not done things to the liking of her husband with his brother, they'd put it in your hoo-ha. And they'd slowly unwind this thing, and the leaves opened out inside you. And basically, it ripped you to bits and caused blood loss, major, major blood loss, and just horrific, horrific thing. I mean, oh my God, those poor people, regardless of whether you're male, female, gay, straight, whatever, whoever had that done to them was just disgusting. And you got to think about the torturers who do it. Those people who sit there going, no, I'm going to do this, they ain't right in the head.
Oh, got a little bit excited there, didn't you, darling?
I did. I'm going to have a lie down. It's the leather masks that do it.
Yeah, it's horrific. I have to say, oh my goodness, when you go through the different forms of torture that were around, it is absolutely disgusting.
Oh God, yeah,
absolutely disgusting. I mean, Alan in the chat room has just talked about something called the witch's crane, which I believe is similar to the witch's cradle. Right. Yeah, we was going to talk about that, so we'll do it now because he's brought it up in the chat room. So thank you for that, Alan. This, as he says, is where they were tied up in. Well, it was actually like in a big sack, and they were hoisted up into a tree limb, and then they would poke it and push it around and set fire to. Oh my God, it was really, really horrible. And it's hardly surprising that people started to confess, really, because when you start looking at the different, I mean, we're going to go on and we're going to tell you about lots and lots of different types of torture that we came across for not just witches, but for all sorts of crimes. In fact, I think you had to sneeze in the wrong direction and there are torture them. Do you know what I mean? It really, really was horrendous.
Dog agrees with you.
Where they think some of these things up is absolutely...
Oh, God, yeah.
How people think this up to do to another human being astonishes me, because there is no way I could ever... I just wouldn't want to do anything horrible to anybody. I'm just not that kind of person. So although I have been in reeks of hysterical laughter this week at times, there is also yes, that horrifying side of me that can't actually believe somebody did this to, or thought this up to inflict on another human being, no matter what you think they've done. So,
well, no, exactly. I mean, you're like most normal people. Your only bit of torture is being spanked lightly on the bottom with a rolled up copy of Woman's Weekly. But you know,
you don't know that.
Shh! I'm not supposed to let everybody tell, am I?
Well, I'm not going to say another word on that subject. Right, let's go back to forms of torture.
That do you know one of the ones that really got me about the witches, and it's still now it makes my teeth go on edge. And it wasn't one where it necessarily did loads and loads of damage, but it was the one where they used to rip suspected witches' fingernails off and then poke the open wounds with needles. Oh!
You know what? It's bad enough, like, now, girls will appreciate this probably a little bit more than men because we grow our nails longer. But like when you break your nail just below the bed and you have to pull your nail off so your bed of your nail is, that alone is really painful. So ripping the entire nail off must have been, just one must have been excruciatingly painful. And then to stick nails in it.
Oh, I ripped a nail off by accident once a long time ago, just tucking my shirt in, and my nail caught my belt, and I didn't know, and I pushed down, and it went, ripped the whole nail off. Ow. But these things, ow!
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
oh, no. But yeah, very inventive, and you've got to admit the torturers had to be complete sadists, because not normal
Completely.
people would do that. No.
No, that was called the Turkus, wasn't it?
Oh,
See, the dog agrees with me. I love it when the dog agrees with me.
yes. Sorry, say again, please.
It was called the Turkus.
The Tuckers, that's it. Yes, yes.
Or the Turkus.
Uh,
Turkus.
uh, it was.
Turcas, in case you want to go away and look it up, guys. Oh,
Yeah,
bless
what
you.
people?
We should have had Richard on this because he loves, well, love is the wrong word. I do apologise. That is not the right word. He knows a lot about this. We should have had him
Yeah.
on as well, shouldn't we, Paul?
He's in the chat room actually, and he's just said that people would endure extreme forms of torture because basically, if they confess whilst under torture, the crown would say "thank you," and they take all their lands, money, the whole lot. I mean, look at the Templars. When they had them burning and everything.
True that. But it just goes to show, doesn't it, that why people, if you was like a really rich landlord or you had like a really high baronetcy or, you was high up and they wanted that, they would torture you for like no real reason other than just to get your lands and your money. Do you know what I mean?
It's like same with the witch hunter generals. Like the amount of money they got paid was ridiculous when you compare it to today's amount, and they only did it just to get the money.
Yeah, and I mean, I know it was like a really hard environment to live in, and you're scratching a living and trying to get by, and it's very political, wasn't it, and all that sort of thing. But even no, it's just still. I mean, should we talk about the tub? The tub. This is disgusting.
God.
This is so disgusting.
Yeah,
right?
that's just Paul's bathtub.
Actually, I don't have a bathtub. I've got a shower.
So we can't.
Got a bucket with a pope on the rope.
No.
Anyway, lads, the tub was a known. The person who was being convicted would be placed in a wooden tub with only their head sticking out, right? And then the executioner would paint their faces with milk and honey, which would attract flies and bugs and stuff. And then they would also feed the victim, so at least they were being fed, I suppose. But of course, in this like little mix, they ended up, pooing and weeing. So they ended up like not just having all this stuff in them around them, they also had their own excrement.
They were rolling around in their own filth.
They were, and then
It sounds like an episode of I'm a Celebrity.
Oh my God, it does, doesn't it?
Yeah, without the balls, what's it? Yeah.
But after a few days, maggots and worms would then start to devour the body as they were alive, and they're still alive, so they're decaying alive. So to start with, it don't sound too bad, does it? Do you know what I mean? To start with, you think, I can cope with this. I'm, a bit warm. I'm being fed. Yeah, all right, I've got a few flies around me, but it's not so bad. And then as the days go on, it just gets worse and worse and worse.
And there was two other forms of that. One was Chinese and one was the Vikings, Danish Vikings. Exactly the same thing, but the Vikings would put two small wooden boats, one on top of the other, and they'd put you inside it. Same thing, head sticking out. You couldn't move because these two boats pinning you down. They'd paint you with milk and honey or mead or something like that, get the flies on you, and then they'd push you out to sea, and that was it. You were never seen of again. So not only were you pooping yourself to death and had the maggots and everything eating your face and that, you're going to drown as well. So, hey. And then the Chinese would do the basket, but they would also hoist it up in a tree next to a wasp or bee's nest.
Oh, my goodness me.
Just to add insult to injury.
The Chinese do like to take it one step further, don't they?
Yeah. If somebody just says, $20, and that's it. They go off and do one. They all run around mad, yeah.
They do like to take it, or seem to want to take it one step further. They are quite, mind you, they were quite known for it in World War II, weren't they?
The Japanese were, yes.
Yeah.
We're not even going to touch on that subject for this one, but they did have a certain section, Unit 70 or 72, something like that, and they used to do live autopsies on their prisoners and everything like that.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, yeah, we won't talk about that now.
No, not now.
Right, another one was the saw.
Yo, that was used on witches as well. Oh,
yeah.
horrible.
Yeah, really, really horrible. So the alleged witch would be hung by her feet upside down with her legs spread apart. It's always legs spread apart, you notice?
And naked.
Obviously.
All contain yourself.
Right, now, hold on to your stomachs, guys, because this is gruesome. Right, they would take a saw and start to cut her in two from the vagina to the head with this saw. Right?
Yeah,
the victim would usually lose consciousness once the saw reached her navel. That's nice. But some still stayed alive until the saw reached her heart.
Yeah, absolutely horrific way of killing somebody. I mean, half these things here that we've researched about, they wouldn't go amiss in one of the Saw films anyway, would they? I mean, you know.
No. I mean, when you start looking at the horror movies, I mean, it truly has taken leaves out of history's books. I can't, like I say, I keep saying this, I can't believe people did this to other people.
Well, I mean, with the witches, there was the blooding as well. But they'd tie them up and they'd slash their face and their nose, which was believed to let their power drain out of them so they couldn't do anymore. But they'd also die from terrific blood loss, because we're not talking like a minor scratch across the nose. We're talking somebody called a plastic surgeon, you know?
Oh, no. I mean, this is just... And these are just basics at the moment. We haven't even really got into the nitty-gritty of it, really, have we? Because we haven't even got into, like, contraptions that they built to inflict torture on people. And if you're wondering why we're talking about torture on a paranormal radio show, we're trying to express how we've always said that when people go through extreme forms of emotion or an extreme form of emotion and feeling and stuff like that, it leaves an imprint on a building or a place. And so you can imagine, we're trying to explain to you that these forms of torture would have left such an emotional imprint on a location or a place because of the fact that these people went through this, not just one person, but we're talking like lots and lots of people going through this. This is not something that happened on the odd occasion. This is something that happened on a regular basis. So we're going to take a little break because we're halfway through the show already. Oh my God, it's going so quick. So we're going to take a little break, Paul, and then we'll come back and we'll carry on telling you some more horrible, horrible torture methods afterwards.
The T-Files here at Parasearch UK Radio, discussing hauntings from around the world, the facts and the hearsay about each case. Was it real haunting or an elaborate hoax for monetary gain or fame? Listen and discuss with me, Terra Palmer, here at the T-Files.
Join Paul Rook live at 9 p.m. for the Trident Paranormal Show, where he will be discussing and explaining everything from the strange, weird and the paranormal myths and legends. From fact and fiction, we have all on the Trident Paranormal Show.
Join Jay and Teresa Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. with their Paranormal Hindsight from across the USA, only on Parasearch UK Radio.
Join Richard Clements on Thursday nights at 10 p.m. for the Mystery Hour, only on Parasearch UK Radio.
You're listening to Dark Nights Paranormal Show with Kerry and Mark on Parasearch UK Radio.
Good evening, everyone. We are live with Dark Nights, and we're talking about torture tonight. So, Kerry Greenaway. I was about to say Kerry Ann again.
No, I know.
No.
Kerry Greenaway's here now, so just fill you in with all the methods of torture and stuff that she's enjoyed and over the years, I suppose.
Over the years, oh my goodness.
Only a few, though, not many.
You've heard all the rumours.
What you're on about 50 Shades of Grey was made from memoirs in your diary, wasn't it?
So rumour has it.
Well, 50 Shades a bit tamer than that, really, isn't it?
So rumour has it. So we've talked about the tub, and we've talked about the saw, and we've talked about the witch's cradle, and we've talked about impalement, and we've talked about the turkis, and we've talked about the pear, and we're now going to... And the bamboo, and the blooding. Gosh, we've covered quite a few. Now, the next one we're going to cover is... Right, Mark, you liked this one, didn't you? Well, again, like is the wrong word. The garrote.
Yeah, I'm not into me love you long time, $20, and I'm going to hurt you. I'm not into that. Right, the garrote. They still use it these days. It's a preferred method of execution for certain assassins as well. Basically, long wooden pole on either end of a string, or piano string, or guitar cord, or length of twine, whatever, coiled round the neck, or a piece of leather, actually, wasn't it? Because it was Holland Man. Piece of leather around the neck, twist it, twist it, twist it, twist it. They're strapped down. They can't breathe. They die.
Simple as that.
Bit better death than some of these things, like being sawn in half. But sort of Bronze Age and Iron Age, they use a garrote a lot, especially when they sacrifice to the gods of the fields.
Oh my goodness. We had another form of garroting last night from Andy Mercer, didn't we? They've gone very quiet. Oh no, you weren't in that conversation.
I wasn't. I was in the hospital, I'm afraid.
They use a very similar method, apparently, for eunuchs.
Oh, thank you.
Well, clearly, that's not a torturous method. He says apparently it's painless. I don't know how he knows that.
Trust me, I'm a bloke, and I wouldn't want that.
No, horrible. But anyway, moving on swiftly, because I've gone off subject again. Now, this isn't so much a form of torture. It was more a form of execution, and this was burning.
Yeah.
And again, in similar ways to the blooding of as an alleged witch, which was supposed to drain them of their power. Burning was the same belief, really, was that when you boiled the blood of a witch, that would also drain her power. St. Augustine, good old St. Augustine, apparently he declared that heretics, pagans and Jews would burn forever in eternal fire unless saved by the Catholic Church. So this was the theory behind burning on the stake. Now, as we all know, burning on the stake was very, very common in the Inquisition, wasn't it?
You never know when the Inquisition will strike.
The Inquisition loved a bit of burning, didn't they? Okay. And well, they didn't just burn people for witches. That was actually about heretics as well. So they used that for lots of different things. Oh my goodness, Australia! We've got Australia in the chat room.
Mr. Rhett there, he's from Australia, and he's just got up early for work. I think it's about 2-3 a.m. over there, and he's listening into us all the way over. I think it's New South Wales.
And what subject to get up with?
I know, he's coming on to a torture show. Oh, bless him. I have to say hello. Hi, Rhett. Give a shout out to Rhett.
Just say good day.
Oh, you got to love it. So we're talking about Sorry.
I was going to say, the thing that gets me when researching this is the amount of things that were torture instruments that were invented for women, just vast amounts of them, and there was not a lot for men. I mean, you could use them on either sex, but it seems predominantly it was all developed for women, and I just get the feeling that back then, men didn't like women very much.
That's because we're so powerful. They've always been trying to put us down for over the years.
No,
that's what that is.
No,
well, it was the breast ripper.
It's because women claim they're always right, and that's the only way we can get our own back.
No, it isn't. It's because we're the more powerful sex, and you men feel threatened by us.
I don't.
No, I disagree.
I just say yes, dear, a lot.
As he tests out his method of torture, that's why he was in hospital last night.
Well, one of these... Ooh.
Just remember, I've got to pick you up tomorrow, Paul, and you'll be driving in my car.
Anyway,
be
lads.
Careful.
Anyway, lads, We are live on Parasearch UK Radio. Bear that in mind. One of the methods of torture that we discovered was something called the rippers. And this involved red hot or freezing metal claws. Ladies, hold on to your chests. Metal claws ripping off the breast or testicles of the accused.
What happens if a lady's got testicles as well? I mean, does that just confuse the torturer?
No, I think you'd just go for both.
Okay, so Lady Gaga's in for it either way. Okay, carry on.
Oh, don't diss the Gaga. Seriously. Dodgy ground.
Those rippers looked horrible. They were like massive. You know the clamps that they use on certain babies when they're stuck to pull them out?
Yeah.
The head clamps. It looked like that, but the clampy bit was wider with two, where it looked like a set of fangs going down and a set of fangs going up. And basically, yeah, they hooked it around one of your puppies, and depending on how much they want to torture you, they'd either cut it a bit or rip a chunk of flesh off, or they go, do you know what? You're not having that, and they chuck it off.
Oh, it's so gross.
Yeah.
So gross. And another one, which was like a ripping kind of tool, was the Heretic's Fork, wasn't it?
Oh, that was another nasty one. They're all nasty.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not a nice one, is there? If you had to pick one, you wouldn't want any of them. But you
couldn't lower your head.
Yeah, it was like a collar that was fitted around your neck, and it had 4 sharp points on the end.
2 on each end, yeah.
Yeah, so any time you moved, one of these points would like stick in. So you literally couldn't move. You couldn't fall asleep. You couldn't. You just couldn't move with this thing. So, which does, again, initially you think, oh, it's not so bad. I just sit here with my head up. But at some point, you're going to. I would imagine that was used alongside another form of torture.
It was predominantly for witches. It was used to get them to confess, because the bottom forks went between your collarbone, and the top forks went just behind your jawbone, underneath your jaw.
Lovely. So should we talk about contraptions of torture now?
What about one of your favourite ones?
What's that one?
Bamboo.
Wasn't it
No,
the
we've
chair?
done the bamboo. Oh, the chair. This is like a chair which has got like... Now, if you imagine the nail of...
Pyramid upside down.
No. I was going more bed of nails, but in a chair kind of form. Do you remember that one? We looked at that one. It's like a chair. It's like a bed of nails, but in a chair.
Yes,
and you're strapped into it. And then, so you're being poked by these sharp nails, as it is. And then they start, like, making you... They heat up, like, the braces, don't
Some of them,
they?
yeah. Some of them had braziers underneath to heat certain parts of the chair up.
So whatever way... Sorry.
Yeah.
Carry on.
Carry on.
So no matter what way you moved, you're being ripped to shreds by the chair you're sat in. And these spikes, your arms are like flat out on these spikes, and your back's flat out on these spikes, and obviously your legs and your seated area are all, and then they start heating the things. So every time you move to try and get away from the searing heat of the braces that you're experiencing, you're being ripped to shreds by these nails on this chair as well. I mean, goodness me. Gentle torture. James I ordered Guy Fawkes to be put to the gentle tortures. Right. What's gentle? None of them are gentle. Even the rack.
I think he might mean the genital tortures, possibly.
Oh.
That wouldn't be gentle.
That might make a little bit more sense, wouldn't it? So what's gentle about any of them?
Well, that thing about the chair there did again, like Vlad did with his impaling, where depending on what statue you were, depending on how long the pole was that went up your hoo-ha, well, the chair depended on what you'd done and how high up you were as to how many spikes were in the chair. And it also depended on what your crime was as to whether they heated up the brazier underneath your Tanaka clan,
Your Tanaka clan.
So if you fancied having your biscuits boiled or burnt, that would be something to do with heresy or denouncing the king or anything like that. If you just nicked a fish off the local fishmonger's thing, it would only be a few spikes and you get a few slapped around the face. obviously it's going to hurt, and there's the possibility you're going to die from septicemia because they never cleaned any of these instruments.
Can you imagine the smell?
Blech.
When you walked into the room, could you imagine the smell? That would
That'd be
just
like walking past an abattoir, wouldn't it?
God, oh my goodness.
I think
Anyway.
if you was tortured by any of this stuff, the smell would be the least on your mind.
Well, this is true, but that just would add to the fear the minute you walked in the room, wouldn't it? You'd be scared anyway.
God,
and
yeah.
then,
Yes. Yep, definitely.
oh,
It
you're
was-
saying that gentle torture was considered to be the rack. Now, we all know what the rack is. This brings in mind, I have to say, and this was something you said earlier, Mark, about you'd go more for the, oh, goodness me, Carry On films. They did
Yes.
a Carry On film, and
Oh,
they
yes.
they
Yes.
racked. It was the Tudor one, wasn't
Williams.
it? Carry On Henry.
Carry On
And
Henry,
they
yeah.
racked. They racked one of the. I can't remember his name now. Paul, do you know his name?
No, I don't.
They
was
put
the
Kenneth
one with-
Williams on it, didn't they? And Bernard Bresslaw.
Was it Kenneth Williams? And he
Oh,
ended up.
no, Charles Hawtrey. It was Charles Hawtrey.
And they stretched him, didn't they? But
Yes.
again, this isn't a very good torture because they didn't just stretch you so you got taller, which
No, they stretch everything.
they stretched you to the point where your limbs would be popped out of their joints and even on occasion ripped off.
They did that with the knee clamps as well, didn't they?
Yeah.
Splitter.
I know. And then you've got the various, like we were talking, again, we found these are the things you find when you're looking up torture because it's absolutely horrendous. There's the pyramid chair.
Yeah, that's a nasty one, a very nasty one. Do you want me to explain it or you explain it?
You please. I just can't say these words, so you need to.
Okay, well, basically the pyramid chair was exactly what it says. It was a pyramid of either metal or wood that was on a pillar up in the air. You were suspended up in the air, and your
Just say
cheddar
it.
gorge, so to speak, was put on the point of the point of the pyramid was put where they put the prayer of despair, and then they would have people pulling on ropes attached to your ankles and wrists, or they would attach weights to them. So basically, you were being pulled down onto this pyramid that was slowly impaling you and going up your hoo-ha. Yeah.
Oh my
Is that where the
goodness.
term "pulling my leg" comes from?
Yeah.
No, that came from me. Mine came off.
No, I think you're right, Paul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you're right. The thing is with that one, it didn't actually kill you. Most people didn't die from that
It was
one.
it was the septicemia
It was the
you got from
after,
it.
yeah, it was the aftermath of that. Because don't forget, they didn't have, doctors like we know today didn't sew you up and make you better again. They just,
You couldn't.
Yeah.
You come off that, and you've got a bottom the size of a watermelon, and it's like, nah, I ain't gonna sew that up, mate.
and there's various variations of this. There's the Judas
Spanish
cradle, which was the pyramid, but there was also the donkey one, which was just like
Not what you think.
yeah, it's not like a nice donkey. It's like a pyramid shape, but it's more of like a vaulting thing.
Yeah, it's
than
like
it
a
was.
vaulting horse with two
Yeah.
bits of wood put together. You were put on the top of the horse with your legs dangling down each side. The apex of the wood went up between your legs, between your bum cheeks and everything. Again, you had to be naked. I can see a pattern forming here. And again, they'd attach weights to your legs, and gradually you were dragged down the apex of the wood and split in half.
That's right. I mean, it was a really, really brutal time. And I want to just I'm only going to touch on him lightly because I want to do a whole show on this guy. And the reason I want to talk about this guy. Now, I want to talk about Dick Turpin just for a second. Now, he wasn't, he wasn't really tortured, but he did.
No, he wasn't.
He was brutal in regards to the crimes that he did. Like he raped and beat and did horrible things to people, in his crime, and he tortured people. Now, when we were talking about how the impact of emotional abuse, I suppose you want to call it, or physical abuse can have an impact on a location in regards to leaving an imprint and, haunting allegedly after it. Well, he is linked to a very famous pub in Enfield called the Rose and Crown Pub. Now, this was the scene of a really, really, I have to mention it because it's funny, Most Haunted series. And this is the one where
I know where you're going.
The lads are laughing at this because they know where you're going with this. This is the Mary Loves Dick.
I just damn near spat my tea everywhere. Your timing was perfect then.
The Mary Loves
Dick. Mate, eat Mary loves Dick. Yes.
It's a very good impression. And I wanted to just bring him in quickly because although, he ended up in York prison and ended up being hung for his crimes. And so we're going to do a whole show on him because he's a fascinating character. But I just wanted to bring that in because I wanted to show that although he allegedly wasn't, people have said that he haunts this Rose and Crown, but the only link he actually has with the Rose and Crown was the fact that his grandfather ran it. He didn't actually have any real links there. But he was such an impact on this area, like Epping and Enfield, that people regularly feel that they're getting him through on a mediumistic level or something like that. And it could be because he was that nastier character that he had that capacity to inflict pain on other people. That's a theory of mine anyway. Lads?
Yeah, well, to be absolutely honest, it was the way his demise was a bit of a, how can I put it, a bit of karma getting its own back, shall we say, with the things that he did to people with his gang, because, he used to run around with the Gregory gang when he first started off. And when they used to rob people, they kicked their doors in and they tortured the people in there until they told you where the money was and this, that, and the other. One bloke, they pulled his trousers down and they basically shoved his ass in the fire until he told them where the money and everything was. And then after a long story, because we're not going to go into the story in detail here because we're going to do it in another show, but basically he got captured, and then the person that executed him was Thomas Hadfield, who was a former member of his gang, the Gregory gang. Yeah.
I think what that does, it illustrates actually the culture of torture, though, that the fact that everybody, they used torture to, get what they wanted out of people, in not just in dungeons, in castles, but it was like a cultural thing, even on a basis of, robbery. They had pistols. Shove a pistol in my face, I'll tell you what you want, mate. Do you know what I mean? You wouldn't need to torture me any more than that. But I think it just goes to show that culture of how people acted towards one another back in those kind of days.
He wasn't even a good-looking bloke. He was covered in pox scars, only from the smallpox.
He was, and he was only romanticised because of the penny dreadfuls that used to come out in the Victorian times, I believe. I'm probably going to be corrected on that by Andy Mercer. But it was romanticised as a story, particularly the story of him riding to York on Black Bess in a day. Right. It was supposed to be, wasn't it? Which is like, what,
it wasn't him that did that. It was another...
I didn't think it was possible to do that.
No, it wasn't that far, but it was based on... I can't remember his name. I'll have to find out for another show. But there was another highwayman who actually did a midnight ride like that, and he basically said, "Oh, that was me." And it's like one other thing I forgot to say is when they captured their gang, although then torturing was outlawed, a couple of his gang, they actually did hamstringing on them to get confessions.
Lovely.
Yeah. Hamstringing is when they basically put a knife in your thigh and then cut the hamstrings up top there so you can't walk.
Mm.
Anyway.
Beautiful.
Do you want to talk about Mr. Ted Bundy?
Yes, I was going to bring that up next because I wanted to bring it up even into modern days because although it's not really a form of torture, it's a form of execution. I think it's a really good illustration of how that kind of character and that kind of death can lead into alleged paranormal activity because, Mark, fill us in about Ted Bundy. Tell me a little bit about him.
Well, he was a good-looking chap. And basically he killed young female victims by bludgeoning them or sometimes strangulation. He'd rape them, and he wasn't too fussy whether he raped them before they were dead or after he killed them. So, we've got a bit of necrophilia going on as well here. But horrible, horrible man. And then in the end, when he was captured, he was taken to Florida State Prison in Relford, and he was executed. And there have been a reported case, well, a substantial number of cases, where the ghost of his body, what am I talking about? The ghost of Ted Bundy is basically seen in the doorway to the execution chamber because it was where the electric chair's kept. And one guard has stated that Ted Bundy was standing in a doorway and disappeared, and then sat in the electric chair, just smiling at them casually. And he wasn't strapped in. And then the guards described how Bundy would smile, a very knowing smile, as a greeting when he entered the room. He and his fellow guards tried to speak to Bundy, but he vanished straight away. And there was another point where there were so many sightings of Bundy in his old room that prison officials couldn't find any guards who were willing to go in the same room as him. And if I remember rightly, one of them managed to speak to him, and the only thing he'd ever say, the goodness spirit, would say, "Well, I beat all of you, didn't I?" And he'd disappear. And what a horrible man. He did all that, and then he came back just to seriously annoy the guards.
Well, I mean, again, I mean, that's not really a method of torture. Like I said, it's more a method of execution, which was the electric chair. I mean, they still use that in this day and age. Now, Daisy, who's listening in the other room, bless her, she's with me. She's actually in the other room at the moment. She's actually been to death row as part of the course she did in criminology, and she's actually been there, and she said it's a very quiet place, eerie, and she's been telling me about it, and she's she was the one who actually brought this to our attention, wasn't it, Mark?
Yeah, so I'm listening to you.
Carry on. Right, I don't expect you to agree with me at that point, but carry on. She was actually one who brought this to our attention, and we felt it was a really modern example of how
brings it up to date.
Yeah, it brought it right through. So you go to any of these places, like we've all been. Well, I say we've all been because I haven't. But when you
is there anything you want to tell us there, Kerry?
Like Chillingham Castle, or even Leap Castle. We looked into Leap Castle. We looked into Chillingham Castle. There's some really famous places that had torture chambers, and everybody who's investigated them get a real bad feeling when they're down in these alleged torture chambers, and even like Colchester Castle was supposed to have had one. Every castle was supposed to have had one at some point, I believe. Is that right, Paul?
I do think so, yeah. I mean, I've even been to Shrewsbury Prison.
Oh,
where
yeah.
They've actually got a hanging room, and they've got like a death row type of place in there. And the energy is so different in there that it's very heavy. So...
I've actually got a useless piece of information for you regarding electric chairs. Sorry to interject there. Was it the old, I can't remember which tribe it was, but it was an African tribe, Haile Selassie.
Mm-hmm.
Ever heard of him?
No.
I think it was 1950s, 1960s. Haile Selassie basically was a bit of a dictator. He banded a load of tribes together. He wasn't a very nice person. He loved the idea of the electric chair, so he sent away to America, bought an electric chair, had it brought back to his palace, had it fitted, and there this electric chair sat, but nobody in that state had electricity. Anyway,
how strange.
Yeah, he'd have been better off going to IKEA, getting some bamboo.
But going back to like when you're investigating and you go to these areas where these extreme forms of torture were used, even from modern times through to the ancient times, it, like Paul says, it does have a distinct, different feel to it.
Well, look at Leap Castle. I mean, that's supposed to have an elemental in it that was awakened with all the deaths that happened there.
Yeah. I mean, it's absolutely crazy. So you need to be aware of that when you're investigating, guys. Just going to put that out there.
Absolutely.
We're actually running out of time.
Well, we've got lots of information there we can use for other shows.
Yeah, maybe we'll do a Torture 2. Like a sequel.
I'll tell you what, you can do it on the same night that's 50 Shades of Grey 2 is out. All right, I won't have to go to cinema with my sister.
Actually, I was going to say, I think we're all actually, no one's doing a show then. Actually, all going to see 50 Shades of Grey. We'll have to do it after the cinema shut.
Before we go, would you like to explain to the listeners what we're going to be doing this weekend and what the shows are going to be about next Friday? Yeah,
we're going down to Somerset this weekend. That was my little accent there. Did you like it?
Aren't we?
No, we're all going. I can't wait. I'm actually going to meet Paul in the flesh. And we're going to go and investigate in an undisclosed location. Right. And it's going to be awesome. I can't wait to be actually out doing a proper paranormal investigation because I haven't done one for ages.
Oh, I'm going to scare you.
No, you're not.
The rain holds off.
Yeah, let's hope it does. But
it will.
Good.
If it's raining too much, we'll just all stand behind Paul. He'll get the rain off us.
Yeah.
Oh, I think it'll be good. I can't wait. And we're taking all the tech and I'm taking my crystals. So next week, what we're going to do is we're actually going to be telling you all about what happened on that investigation and some famous little ghost stories from around the Somerset area that we're going to. And we're gonna have an awesome week. I literally can't wait. I'm so excited.
Well, we're not just going there as well, but on Sunday, I'd like to take everybody to have a look at one of my ideas for a ghost walk for Dark Nights, because as you know, we all work for Dark Nights. I'm the manager, and Kerry is my second in command, and Paul's one of the overall managers of Trident. So we're going to go and scout out some locations and do investigation.
Going to be awesome.
It's going to be fantastic. I literally can't wait.
And you were going to come back from there talking like that, aren't you? We're going to sound like we're going to be Pirates of the Caribbean, so then we can use some of their torches.
Yeah, you've got to come back with an accent.
We didn't even look.
Keel hauling was a torture.
Oh my goodness! I was going to say we didn't even go into like sailing kind of torture, did we?
We can do it another time. We've got enough info for about 3 shows.
I know we're going to have to. Yeah, we're going to have to do a sequel. Oh,
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to do a sequel. But next week, we're talking about Somerset. Now, don't forget, on Parasearch UK, radio is on every night from 9 o'clock. On Mondays, you have Tara. Is that right, Paul?
Yeah, it is, yeah. Tara Palmer. She's going to be talking about a guy called Albert Fish.
He was horrible, that guy.
Absolutely disgusting what he done. He sexually abused children and ate them.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I'd rather go down McDonald's and have some chicken McNuggets than a kid.
Absolutely, I would.
And then Tuesday, who have we got on Tuesday?
That would be me talking about paranormal in the Bible.
See, I'm looking forward to that one, I have to say. And then on Wednesday, we have the American contingency kicking in, don't we?
We do. We've got Jay and Teresa Lynch with Hindsight Paranormal, or Paranormal Hindsight. I always get it.
And I think I might be around for that.
Yeah.
Excellent. And then on Thursday, we've got our very own Kerry Ann, who doesn't... well, my goodness, the show she did this week was fantastic.
It was really good this week.
Oh, she really does come up with some good things, that girl does. She's fantastic. And then on Friday nights, you have a double whammy, because you have the Great Paranormal Debate at 8 o'clock, and then you have us at 9.
Yeah, that's right. Your hostess with the mostess, me, we'll all be back on Friday night. Thank you for listening, everybody, and thank you very much for tuning in Australia.
Yeah, thank you so much for all joining us in the chat room. It's been great. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Again, enjoy is probably the wrong word.
No, we know you did. We know you're going to go off air and you're going to start shaking. You know, we know you are.
But join us next week and have a great week, guys. And join for all the other shows that we've got on Parasearch UK Radio.
Have fun, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hey.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to join us for more shows throughout the week. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, and the World Wide Web to keep up to date with all the shows right here on Parasearch Radio.